Hey everyone, welcome back to the Making It in Manhattan podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how I started my career in the fashion industry and life before social media and Vazzana. There is a lot that we have to cover, from landing my first internship to getting my first job at Teen Vogue and to my very, very first styling job when I was only 20 years old. So let's get started. So I think it's always best to start from the beginning. I grew up in New York, right outside of Manhattan, and I always wanted to work in the fashion industry. I was always someone who was cutting up old clothing, watching Project Runway, and just dreaming of breaking into the fashion industry. So when it came time for college, I knew I wanted to go to school for fashion, but ultimately really didn't know a lot about the different career paths in the fashion industry, such as fashion design versus fashion merchandising and things like that. So I ended up applying to a lot of schools outside of New York. You're probably wondering, well, Caroline, you said that you're from New York. Why didn't you just go to a fashion college in New York City? For me, growing up in New York, I have a big Italian family. I have a lot of siblings, and ultimately I wanted to go to school outside of New York to kind of try and find myself. I think college is a really, really important time for anyone thinking about going to college or, where to go to college, all of that stuff. I really loved the fact that I went away to college and that I dormed, and I went to a small liberal arts school in Pennsylvania. So it was about a 2.5 hour drive from where I grew up. So, it wasn't like I was just living at home and commuting to school, which that is fine too. If that's what you're doing, that's great. But for me, college was the time that I found myself and ultimately learned so much about the person I wanted to be and things like that, and just who I was outside of my siblings and my family. So as I said, I went to a small liberal arts college in Reading, Pennsylvania, literally middle of nowhere. It's called Albright College, but looking back, I wouldn't change anything. I always think that everything happens for a reason in life, and going to Albright and ultimately going to a smaller liberal arts college gave me the opportunity to learn a lot about the different aspects of the fashion industry. So originally, I went in as a fashion design major and quickly realized that I didn't love design and sewing. I took one fashion design class and quickly realized I'm not a play it by the rules kind of gal. So for example, I remember we had this big sewing book for school for this class, and you had to sew an exactly 2-inch hem or something like that. And I was like, it wasn't for me. It just felt so small and minute. I was like, I just want to play around and cut up fabric and sew things together. So I realized no, there's a lot more technicalities that go into it. So design wasn't for me, but I knew that I ultimately wanted to work in the fashion industry. And so being at a liberal arts college, I then broadened my major to fashion design and merchandising. One of my most commonly asked questions is, A, where did you go to college? And B, what did you study? So I went to Albright College and I double majored. I ended up doubling major in fashion design and merchandising. So ultimately with this major, I got to still, learn about the technical design aspects of everything, but then I also got to learn about the business aspects of the industry. And I felt like that was very beneficial since I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So how do you find out what you exactly want to do? Internships. Interning is my biggest piece of advice to breaking into the industry and also figuring out what you want to do. So I briefly touched on this in my intro episode about where I interned and things like that, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on all of that now. So for any of you who are essentially trying to get internships and break into the industry, grab your notebook, grab your pen, get ready. We're going to chat all about how to do it. So for me, it was my sophomore year of college, and I knew that summer I wanted to do my very first internship in New York City. So I applied absolutely everywhere. As I've mentioned, I applied to 50 different companies and only heard back from 2. So when I was applying, it was pre-Instagram, pre-LinkedIn, and how I was finding all of the contacts for these internships was just through Google. So it was a lot of black hole email addresses, info at, contact at, not really anything that was beneficial, except for Anna Sui, who I ultimately ended up interning for. They had an exact internship email address listed on their website. So I emailed them, I sent over my resume and my cover letter, and I remember at the time at my school, they had a career advice center on campus. So I went there and I had them edit my resume and go over my resume with me. So if you don't have a resume yet, take advantage of the tools that your school offers. I don't know if your school has a resume or career advice center where you can go edit your resume, but there's also a lot of resources online and people online who offer to edit your resume for you. So take advantage of that, build up a really great resume. And at the time, I want to just preface, I didn't have a lot of experience. So it's not like I had a really meaty resume with all this great experience. My experience was ultimately my, sorority at college, my college fashion magazine, our college fashion club. That was the experience I had listed on the resume. So if you don't have a lot of great experience when you're first starting out, don't worry about it. I still got an internship just by listing all of my school extracurriculars. They were very impressed by that. I was only, 19 years old. So if you don't have all of this great, amazing industry experience yet, how can you? You're only 19 years old and you're in college. So list out what you are doing or what you're interested in, or if you have a blog or if you have an Instagram or if you have a really great website that you want to list on your resume. It'll show your work ethic and the kind of work you could produce or you could do. So I ended up getting an internship at Anna Sui, and the internship was in their production department, and I got accepted. There wasn't actually any interview process, which was amazing since I was at school in Pennsylvania. Again, this was 2012, so, I don't know why, but no interview process, which was amazing since I was away at school. So I showed up on the first day, just dove in, met everyone. I will never forget what I wore on my first day. I was so nervous. I wore this black and pink floral top, pink big beads, and then tan khaki pants and pink ballet flats. I just wanted to look professional but cute and had no idea what to wear to an internship. So maybe we need to do another episode about that sometime, about what to wear to an internship, because it is very daunting. You still want to show your personal sense of style, but you also want to look professional and you want to, look like you're there to work, not just to, show off your cute outfits, even though that's fun as well. So what does a production intern do? Ultimately, at Anna Sui, a lot of her clothing was produced and made in New York City. So we would wait for orders to come in from big websites like a Net-a-Porter or an Anthropologie. They would order a certain amount of dresses, for example. So maybe they order 200 dresses. So then we take that order and we go to our production center, our production office, which was only around the corner. So it was very nice. So I bring over a sample of the dress and then the fabric, the buttons. I can remember counting out, I had to count out 400 buttons, for example, for a certain dress. So there I am just counting 400 buttons. And then I bring it over there and then they make the dresses, and that's how essentially that all works. It was very interesting at the time. I also made a lot of photocopies and got a lot of coffee, which is important as well. And I always want to touch on this, no matter what task you're given, whether it's, going to a Fashion Week show or getting somebody coffee, do it with pride and do it with excitement, because you never know who's watching. The big boss of the company could be watching, or a fellow intern could be watching. And it's always just great to do it with pride, do it with excitement, and be happy to be there, because that ultimately goes such a long way. Just having a good attitude and being happy to jump in and say anything. I remember literally my boss would be like, "Can you go get me coffee?" And I'd be like, "Yes, sure. What do you want?" And I would just be excited to walk around the city and to explore and to find the coffee shop and get there successfully and do everything right. And she'd usually always be like, "And get something for yourself too." So it always wasn't it wasn't this daunting, I have to be the intern to get coffee. Like, I'm the intern that gets coffee. Like, it's exciting. Do things with pride, because ultimately, if your boss knows that they can trust you with a small task and you're going to do it to the best of your ability, they'll be willing to give you bigger tasks and know that they can trust you with whether it's coffee or it's something absolutely huge and really, really important and exciting. So I did that first internship at Anna Sui during the summer of my sophomore year of college. So now went back to college, had that amazing experience, but already was thinking, okay, I want to do another internship next summer. I need to keep getting my foot in the door. I need to keep learning. I need to keep networking. I need to keep meeting people. But now I wanted to try out a totally different, aspect of the industry, which was magazines and editorial. I was like, why have I never thought of that? I think working at a magazine could be so interesting. Rather than just working for one designer like I was at Anna Sui, at a magazine, you get to work with, every single designer. You get to see samples from every single designer. It's just so much fun and so exciting. Obviously, a lot of hard work, as we are about to get into. But I wanted to talk about how I got my internship at Marie Claire, because it was all about networking within my college. So at our school, when anybody did an internship, you had to do an internship presentation. So I remember I had mine. I was so excited. I made a little PowerPoint. I wore one of my Anna Sui dresses that I got with my clothing allowance, and I was just so hyped and excited about it. That same summer that I interned at Anna Sui, this upperclassman interned at Marie Claire. And so I went to her internship presentation because I wanted to A, learn more about what it was like to intern at a fashion magazine, but B, I also wanted to potentially network with her to see how she got that internship. So I go to her presentation, and it's great. I'm like sitting there the whole time, just like in awe. I'm nodding my head yes to everything and telling myself, okay, I need to go up to her after this presentation and talk to her and ask her, how she got the internship and maybe if she would be willing to give me some advice. So after her presentation, I asked her if the next week I could take her for coffee. So there I am, 19, 20 years old, and I'm already networking at college, and I'm asking upperclassmen if I could take them on a coffee date and things like that. So she says yes. Again, I really didn't know this girl. I was just taking a risk and asking this girl. She could have totally thought I was an absolute weirdo. But I was just so my heart was in it so much. I knew I wanted to work in the fashion industry since I was a little kid, and I was willing to do anything, network with anyone, meet with anybody that I needed to just, meet more people, break into the industry, land more connections, and follow my dreams, as cliche as that sounds. So we went for our coffee date, and I was so excited. And when she got there, she sat down, she looked at me straight in the face and said, I just wanted to tell you, I hated interning at Marie Claire. I absolutely hated it. It was a Devil Wears Prada experience. I did not like it. I would not recommend it. And there I am, heartbroken, because I was so excited, thinking this was going to be my foot in the door and my connection into breaking into the editorial world. So I sat there for a second and I thought about it. And one of my biggest pieces of advice that I could give to any of you listening to this is always experience something for yourself. Just because something was not a great experience for somebody else doesn't mean that you're going to have the exact same experience. So I said to her, okay, totally get that. And that sounds terrible, but I would love to still reach out to them. I would really love to still reach out and interview for an internship. I've always wanted to work in fashion, and I really want to break into editorial, and I don't know anybody. I'm at college in Pennsylvania. I have no connections in the fashion industry, for one, or the editorial world. So this was really my only connection. So I was like, totally understand that you went through that and you hated it. But if you're willing to, I would really appreciate if you could still not connect me or anything, but I just wanted her to give me the email address for the internship coordinator at Marie Claire magazine. And, if she would still be willing to, even though she hated it. So she was like, oh, sure. I'll still give you the email address. Just wanted to warn you that I absolutely hated it. So I was like, okay, noted, need to go into this mentally with that idea that, okay, this might be terrible. But so I emailed them, and with this internship, I did have to go in for an interview. So we had this fall break in like November or October at school. So that is when I scheduled my interview for. And I remember I wore, do you guys remember when those big sock buns were like the thing? Maybe I'm aging myself a little bit, but we called them like the London bun or like a sock bun. It was like this huge bun. Again, this was still 2012 because now it was the fall. So I wore this like huge bun on the top of my head. I will find a picture for you guys that we will like, I don't know, put in the cover art or something for this episode. I wore a long printed yellow, like floral skirt, a white sweater, and these chunky gray T-strap heels. And I thought this outfit was like I thought I looked so good. So when I was going in for my interview that day, I was commuting. As I said, I grew up right outside of Manhattan. So I was commuting to the interview. And at the time, I really only knew how to take particular subway lines. Like I knew the 1, I knew the R, I knew the N. But other than that, like the Green Line, like the 5 and 6, I didn't know. Like I knew exactly how to get to certain places on certain subway trains. So anyway, I looked it up previously. I knew to get to Hearst, which is where Marie Claire was at the time. It's like 300 West 57th Street, I believe. So I knew that if I took the 1 train all the way up to, like 57th or something like that, or 59th, I think, and then got out and walked a couple of blocks, I would be, at the building. So when I went to go take the subway from downtown, the subway was closed because it was right after Hurricane Sandy. I don't know if anybody remembered this time. We're really throwing it back now and showing that I am 30. So the subway was closed down because it had been flooded. So the next closest subway was a 5. And I knew nothing. I was like, I turned honestly to this older woman next to me. I was like, will this take me to 59th? She's like, I think so. Again, like she obviously didn't know either. So I get on the subway and it drops me near where I need to be, but on like the east side, and I needed to be on the west side or something like that. So there I am, like full panic attack. I have on heels too. So it's not like I could like run and power walk. My biggest thing is like never being late for an interview or even just like a job or anything like that. You should never be late. So this is the story about how I had to hail my very first taxi. I am standing there on the side of the road and I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to get there? And I remember just like channeling my inner Carrie Bradshaw. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is my moment. Like, this sounds so corny now. I mean, I take Ubers all the time and taxis, but I like put my hand out and I was like, will they actually stop? Does this actually work? And they did. Long story short, factor in ample amounts of time when you are commuting to an interview, because if I had been late to that interview, who knows if I would be sitting here right now. Like, everything happens for a reason in life, from going to the college I went to my first internship, to my second internship, to my job. I feel like it's like a trickle down effect in life of like things happen for a reason and one thing leads to another and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, held my taxi. Everything worked out. I got there. I did the interview. And honestly, the girl that I interviewed with was so nice that I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I can't believe she had a bad experience. But I got the internship. So now fast forward to the summer. I went from my first internship, which was a very solid, like we interned from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. At 6 p.m., we were like forced out the door. They were like, interns also were not paid back then. So they were like, you have to leave. At Marie Claire, I remember my first day, they were like, okay, get here at 9 a.m. I got there at 9 and there was like already interns there, like already working. And I was like, damn, like what time did these girls get here? Like, this is crazy. So then I remember like 6 p.m. came that night. I like looked at my watch, like nobody moved. Like none of the interns moved. 7 o'clock comes, nobody moves. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, do interns just like work? So anyway, it wasn't until 9 p.m. that night that I finally like said something. I'm like, okay, like I need to go, like, especially because for me, like, it was still like a 40-minute commute since I lived outside of Manhattan. So I was like, I gotta go. And so then I didn't end up getting home till like closer to 10 p.m. And then I had to be in at 9 a.m. the next day because I worked 5 days a week anytime I did one of my internships. Sometimes they're like, oh, do you want a 3-day-a-week internship or a 5-day-a-week? I always did 5 because I wanted to get that feeling of like being full-time and working at the company. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is what the girl ultimately meant, of like, they just work you like really, really late hours. It's not paid. And, 9 p.m. every single day. Like, I was a little bit nervous. I just didn't know if, honestly, I would be able to do it all summer. So I go back to the office the next day, trying to keep my spirits high and like not feel like, oh my gosh, this is a total disaster. What did I get myself into? And I'm sitting in, we had this intern conference room at the time. And obviously, like, I'm the new girl there. So people are like barely speaking to me. But there was this clique of interns that sat in the intern conference room all day. And I ended up talking to people and being like, who are those interns? Because I was at the time hired as a closet intern, which meant I was like helping in the fashion closet, helping with pickups and returns, packing trunks for photo shoots, things like that. They were like, oh, those are the interns that are personal interns to editors. So they're like special interns or something, you know what I'm saying? Like a clique of interns. So I was like, oh, wow, like that's cool. Like, what does that mean? So that meant that each of those interns only interned like for one, each person was like assigned to an editor. And so they only did what that editor asked them to do. So those girls would leave like usually a lot earlier. They weren't there all night packing trunks. They were specifically helping these editors with their pages, with their photo shoots, with whatever it might be. So I was like, okay, how do I become one of those interns? Because that internship sounds a lot better. And that internship also sounds really cool and interesting because in my mind, it sounded like you kind of got a mentor and a really one-on-one experience with an editor. So I started networking with this little cool girl clique of interns, and I was like trying to make friends with them and stuff. And I was like, how did you become like, asking them straight up. I was like, I'd love to become an intern to an editor. So then a few hours went by, and this was my second day, and one of the girls in what I'm going to call the cool girl clique was like, do you want to come to lunch with us? And there I am, like hidden in my big black tote bag is like my bagged lunch that my mom packed for me, and like a little brown bag. So I like stick my brown lunch in my bag. I'm like, sure, I'll come with. And I go to lunch with them, and I'm like so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm with these girls. Like, so now this is my chance. I'm like, how do I figure out, like, how do I get an internship? Like, I don't want to be in this clique, guys. Like, full disclosure, like, I did not want to be in the mean girl clique. I just wanted to get to be an intern to an editor. So I didn't have to work till 9 p.m. every single night for the next 3 months. So we go to the lunch, and at the lunch, the girl who invited me, like, all of a sudden turns to me and's like, okay, so this is the deal. She's like, I'm leaving in like 3 days or something like that. And I'm the personal intern to, I'm not going to name the editor, like XYZ editor. She's been asking me to find a replacement for myself. And I'm not even kidding. This is what the girl said to me. But all the other girls here are so effing weird. She's like, but you just showed up yesterday and like, you seem normal. So I was thinking maybe I could recommend you. And I was like, if only she knew I'm not normal, but I am weird. But so I was like, yes, please recommend me. Oh my gosh, like that's what I want. I would love to be an intern to this editor. That is what I want. So she ends up going back. She tells the editor, and the editor's then like, can I meet with you for an interview? So I go and I have an interview with the editor, and she essentially asked me, she's like, have you ever interned for an editor before? And I'm like, no, I haven't. She's like, okay, well, this is what it's going to be like, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's do a trial and give it a shot. So giving it a shot turned into 3 months later, I had interned for this editor. It was an amazing experience. We became super, super close. Like, literally took me under her wing, taught me everything she knew about the editorial world. But I was also so eager. She used to joke around every day because I had a little red notebook. And anytime she called me, because she would call the conference room and be like, can you send Caroline over to my desk? And I'd run over with my notebook and I'd write down everything she'd say. And we'd have like notebook meetings. And she'd be like, bring your notebook. And like, she'd give me a list of like what I needed to do for the day. So long story short, networking and being nice to those girls, even if they weren't the nicest girls, obviously, paid off in the long run, because I then was able to build this amazing connection with this editor and kind of just like learn under her guidance and, you know, just want to be like her. She became my idol. I was like, I definitely want to be like her. And that is what started my love and my passion for the editorial world and for styling and all of that kind of thing. So also, I wanted to update you guys. I didn't end up working until 9 p.m. for the next 3 months. I only had to work till 7 p.m. So it's like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. every night. But I will say those 2 hours made a big difference in terms of my mental health and in terms of me being so engaged and passionate about the internship. Because if I had to stay till 9 p.m. every night, I don't know if I would have been able to cut it. I would have tried my best. So then my story goes on. I finished my internship at Marie Claire. I interned there for 3 months over the summer. It was amazing and I loved it so much. After, obviously I'm using air quotes, guys, promoted. I really did have a great experience and I learned so much and I just wanted more. I didn't want this to be the end. I was like, leaving this internship and I had so many mixed emotions because as I was walking out the door, I'm like, I don't want this to be the end of, my journey, my making it a Manhattan journey. So literally I can remember going to bed the night of the last day of my internship and feeling a little bit sad and scared even, and like my heart being like, well, what's my next job? What's my next opportunity? What's my next thing? So the next morning I wake up and I'm sleeping in my childhood bed. Cause I was, living at home at the time. I was going into my senior year of college. This was the summer after my junior year of college is when I interned at Marie Claire. I roll over the next day and I look at my phone and I have a Facebook DM from somebody that I knew from high school. And as I said, you guys know I went to an all-girls school, but it was a guy I knew from another school. And he reached out to me because while I was interning at Marie Claire, I was still posting on Instagram, not how I post now, obviously, but I was sharing today in the closet or at this event or just what I was doing and my day-to-day. And that's the thing. Social media is the best portfolio. It is the best just natural and organic and free publicity and promotion for yourself, honestly. So this guy DMs me and he is now a comedian and he reached out and he was just telling me he had a lot of friends who were comedians and he made friends with these two girls who were on this show at the time on MTV called MTV's Girl Code. I don't know if anyone has seen it or watched it, but I wasn't really familiar with it at the time. But long story short, these two girls, because of the show that they were on MTV, they were invited to their very first MTV Video Music Awards, and it was only a few weeks away. And so they needed a stylist to style them for the VMAs. It was their first big red carpet and everything. He essentially asked me if I would want to style them. There I am. I'm 20 years old, going into my senior year of college. I just finished my internship at Marie Claire. And I was being asked if I wanted to style two, amazing women for a very, very big red carpet event. And so I always talk about crossroads in life. So there I was at, honestly, one of my first big, what I'll say, crossroads in life. Option A was Caroline, just admit you don't have the connections and the experience. You can't do this. How are you going to style two people? You don't know how this works. The inner workings of pulling garments from brands and, making sure everything looks perfect and this, that, and the other and red carpet ready and whatever. And then option B was Caroline, fake it till you make it. This is an amazing experience. You need to say yes and you need to just figure it out. It doesn't matter that you literally know nothing and that these girls probably won't even know that you're 20. But like, you need to make it work and you need to say yes. So I literally can remember like writing back on my phone. I was like, I would love to, like, I'll do it. So my first obstacle was like, I think I had like a phone call with the girls to just like go over what they were looking for and things like that. And then I had a week to pull garments from designers and from brands, and they all had to send them to the MTV offices. So then the next week I was going to go to the MTV offices for a fitting with these girls. So I think it's important though to add probably one of my favorite just like funny stories of what I like to say like was like my Hannah Montana world. Like, I'm going into the city, I'm styling these two girls for the VMAs, and then I'm like just a normal 20-year-old like enjoying life and getting ready for my last semester of college. So in this in-between week, you know, I'm pulling looks, I'm doing all of that, getting everything ready. That upcoming like weekend was my 21st birthday because my birthday's in August. So my parents had gone out of the country, and my brother and I, it was just us two, we decided to throw a house party for my 21st birthday in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, though, because that's where like our summer house is, where we go to the beach every summer. I grew up there going every summer. I would do swim lessons. I was a lifeguard. It was just the best place. So we went down there, and honestly, we didn't even end up, you know, we didn't even plan on it being that big of a house party. I think it's such a small town and not much else was going on. And everyone also knew me from growing up, that all of a sudden, like a little hangout of like 20 people turned into a party of like 100 people. And my brother and I just looked at each other and were like, yeah, we're not telling mom and dad about this. So they ended up finding out. We didn't get in too much trouble. The next day, my uncle, the saint he is, was like walking around the outs. I wake up, I'm like, not okay, obviously. I just turned 21. And my uncle, I just hear someone like walking outside on the rocks. He's like picking up just like stray beer cans in the yard and like cleaning up. But so the reason I'm telling you this story is literally had my party, turned 21, and 2 days later, I'm still in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, because it was my birthday and everything. My brother had to drive me to go get like a bus, like one of those big like Greyhound buses from Long Beach Island into Manhattan to go to the MTV offices. So there I am like turning 21, and now I have to like snap back into reality of like, okay, like I need to button myself up. They can't know I'm 21, or like I didn't need to really hide my age, but you know what I mean? Like I wanted to act professional and put my best foot forward. But I just think it's funny like how I could go from one day being like a kid turning 21, like, you know, no worries, no cares in the world. And the next day I'm like, okay, Caroline, like back on track, career, like we got to do this. We got to keep following our dreams and not let anything get in the way. So there's my brother like driving me at the bus stop. He's like, bye, see you later. Like, he's like, good luck. And then like, I also think nobody actually thought this was actually happening there. So there I am, I go into the MTV offices, I'm like taking, you know, photos back in the day, and everything went great. The fitting was amazing. They loved all of the outfits. And then a few days later were the actual VMAs. And I can remember going to their hotel room, helping them get ready. And it was all just very, very surreal. I think the coolest part of it was I was just really like thrown into it all. I didn't know what to expect. I just turned 21. I'd never done a styling job before. And I think if I had thought too much about it and stressed myself out too much, maybe I wouldn't have done as good of a job as I did, and everything wouldn't have gone as smoothly as it did. But since I kind of just jumped in and told myself, yeah, sure, I can do this, even when in the back of my head, I kind of picture like that Lizzie McGuire cartoon being like, what are you talking about? You can't do this. You know nothing about this. But I made it work, and that's kind of what spearheaded or kickstarted my career and my passion as a stylist and in styling. So that I do this crazy MTV styling job, like post about it all over social media. And then like a few weeks later, I'm back at college for my senior year of college in Reading, Pennsylvania. And people are like, that's that girl that was just like posting about styling, like she's crazy, or like people like didn't believe it or thought it was just like so wild and far-fetched. And like I was like, no, it really happened. Like this all really happened, I swear. So then I go back to college for my senior year, and it's great. I think again, then I like switched back into like enjoy your last year of being a kid, because once you graduate, you're going to be working 24/7. I actually had enough credits to graduate a whole semester early. And I remember my one professor being like, you should do it. Then you can start working early. You should graduate early. And I called my mom, and I'll never forget it because my mom's given me tons of great advice throughout my life. But one of the best pieces of advice was she said to me on the phone, why would you graduate early? She's like, you have the rest of your life to work. She's like, you have your rest of your life to go into an office 9 to 5 and sit behind a desk or whatever it's going to be. She's like, you have however many months are in a semester, 5 months. She's like, you have 5 months left to be a kid. She's like, to just enjoy college, to, just have no real expectations. People aren't expecting things from you. You don't have to wake up crazy early, go to an office. She's like, be a kid, enjoys those last 5 months. And it's the best advice ever, because really, if you're listening to this, everything changes after college. Like everyone's like, oh, nothing changes. Everything changes. You become an adult, you're working, you don't see the light of day. I can remember like my first couple jobs at Teen Vogue and In Style, I'd go in like super early and I'd leave when it was already dark out. So enjoy those last couple months, years, semesters of college, really soak it all in. The world and the workforce is here and it's waiting for you. It's not going anywhere. There's no rush. So just enjoy the time being a kid while you can, and you'll learn how to balance it all. Obviously, I did, because one minute I'm turning 21, being a wild, crazy kid, and the next I'm at the MTV offices. So like, if I can do it, you can do it too. So now it's getting towards the spring of my senior year, and everything that's racing through my mind is, you need to find a job, you need to have a job lined up, you've worked so hard, you've done these internships, like now this is the time you want to have a job lined up. What I realized about the fashion industry is a lot of people did not want to hire me until I was already out of college, because they wanted people who could start immediately. When I hear about people in finance who have jobs lined up 4 months, 5 months in advance, I'm like, that just doesn't happen in the fashion industry, especially if you're like applying to be a fashion assistant at a magazine or like an assistant editor. They want people to be able to start right away. So I was emailing everybody still, and I actually did go on a couple of interviews where I commuted back and forth from Pennsylvania, from my college, all the way into New York to do interviews. But most people were like, well, when do you graduate? I was like, oh, in May. They're like, oh, well, reach back out to us then. So I did not have a job lined up for after graduation. That's the first thing. And I remember being so panic stricken because I had always had everything figured out. I had my internships lined up. I had, my network, and I honestly felt like a failure. Like I felt really, really disheartened that I did not have a job lined up after graduation. But with that being said, everything worked out. So I graduate college in May. I'm just like totally upset I don't have a job. I'm applying absolutely everywhere, not hearing back from much, really not having much luck. I was strictly applying for magazine jobs, and I was emailing every editor under the sun. I was going into CVS and Walgreens and opening the magazines and taking pictures of the mastheads so I could see everybody's names. Then I was going back home on LinkedIn and finding all the people and connecting with them and trying to email them and things like that. So it wasn't until the end of June/beginning of July that I finally heard back about what would ultimately become my first job, which was at Teen Vogue. So I emailed someone who I had found through LinkedIn at Teen Vogue, and I sent her an email, sent her my resume, everything. And it just so happened that she had also interned at Marie Claire. Not at the same time, at a different time, but just we had that common experience. So when she saw my resume, right away emailed me back within a couple of minutes, which had been rare because I was sending hundreds of emails and barely hearing back from anybody. So she emailed me back and was like, oh, I interned at Marie Claire too. That's a great internship. We don't have anything open right now, but I'll definitely keep you in mind, because she could just relate. She knew how much work the internship was, the late hours, all of that stuff. So she said she'd keep me in mind. Obviously, of course, I got really excited, but then I reminded myself, people say that all the time, that they'll keep you in mind and then you never hear, and then you just get your hopes up again. But I will say about a month later, or a couple weeks, I'll say like 3 weeks to a month later, I did hear back. And they were hiring for a job for an assistant to come in and help out with Teen Vogue. It was called Back to School Saturday at the time. They don't do it anymore. It was this like shopping event they did with Simon Malls where they'd put on like little fashion shows for like what to wear for back to school. Anyway, I go in for the first interview. It goes great. They tell me they're going to email me right back after this because they want me to come in the next day for an interview with their boss. So I leave. I'm so excited. I send my thank you email because I always say, always send a thank you email, always. And sometimes a handwritten note if you want. But then I didn't hear. I didn't hear anything, and I was devastated and crushed because I thought the interview had gone so well. So about a week goes by, and I had sent one other follow-up, and I didn't hear back. And I was like, oh, man, like I really wonder what happened. Like I thought the interview went so well. So at about a full week mark, I was like, okay, I'm going to send one last follow-up email. Like I don't want to feel like I'm a stalker and like I will not like get the hint. You know what I mean? So I send one last follow-up email, and maybe like 2 minutes later, they email me back. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're so sorry. We've been so busy. Can you come in tomorrow for an interview? And I'm like, I'm there, whatever you need. I drop everything and I go in the next day for an interview. And there I am. I bring my portfolio because I'm meeting with these girls' boss, and I'm so excited. And she just honestly, funny enough, asked me, when can you start? Like if we were to hire you, I was like, today, tomorrow, whatever you need, like I will be here. And so I leave again feeling like the interview went really well. And an hour later, I got a call from them and they asked me if I could start the next day. So that's how I got my job at Teen Vogue: persistency and being super, super available and saying you could start the very, very next day. As I said, I was hired to help out with this initiative that Teen Vogue was doing called Back to School Saturday, but that was only like a 2-month freelance job. So when that was starting to come to an end, I really didn't want to leave Teen Vogue. I loved working there. And at that time, they had just hired a new fashion director. And so she was looking for an assistant. So the girls that were in my department, I was technically in like the marketing department, were like, we should, connect you and put you up for this role to at least interview to be the assistant to the fashion director. And I was like, please, this is amazing. Like I've gotten my foot in the door now. I don't want to leave now. I feel like I've come so close. So I got the interview at least to go to meet with the fashion director, and she was amazing. She was so wonderful, so nice, and someone that I could really see myself working under. I think in this industry, one of the best things is having amazing bosses who you can look up to and essentially aspire to be like, because she was someone that just had amazing style. She was also so nice and friendly, and was someone for little 21-year-old Caroline to just idolize and look up to. So I essentially ended up getting the job, and she was an amazing mentor and taught me so much about editorial and working in the magazine world. But while working at Teen Vogue, the whispers within the walls were, you need to go digital, print magazines are dying, you can't stay at a print magazine, there's going to be layoffs, X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get some digital experience. So teenvogue.com obviously was a thing at the time, and I did enjoy and really love fashion writing because, as I mentioned, in college I was the editor-in-chief of our fashion magazine, so I did always love fashion writing. So before I did anything, I asked my boss, the fashion director, if in my spare time, when I had time, if it was okay to potentially write for teenvogue.com, if I could reach out to the site director at the time and ask him if I could pitch some ideas. She immediately thought that it was an amazing idea and also loved that I was taking the initiative to get involved within different departments of the company. It just showed that I really cared, and the way I phrased it to her was I essentially just wanted to learn as much as possible. So sometimes even if you get hired in one department but show your interest in another department, it can work out in your favor. You never know. And I don't think it'll in any way ever hinder the job you currently have. I think it just shows your interest and that you're excited and you want to help out and learn more. So I emailed the site director, and it's so funny because we're all in the same office, and I'm like emailing, being like, hi, I work here, like 3 desks over. But I asked my boss, and she said that it was okay. If you need more writers, I would love to write something for teenvogue.com. So the site director emailed me right back and was like, yes, come over to my office. And so I went over to his office. We had a quick meeting, and he was like, great. Your first assignment's going to be about Halloween costumes and recreating like iconic celebrity or like character outfits into costumes. So essentially like Blair Waldorf and like finding pieces in your wardrobe that you already had to be that costume. Super fun. So anyway, the point of the story is I started writing for teenvogue.com and building my digital footprint. So getting my name out there in the digital world so that if you Googled me, pieces came up, articles came up. Building an online presence and an online portfolio is what I was doing. So though I loved working for Teen Vogue and loved my boss and was learning so much, I also really did understand that I needed to go digital because magazines were folding, they were getting rid of print. I mean, it's so sad that Teen Vogue as a print magazine no longer exists. So I knew that I had to go digital. So I ended up going to InStyle.com and got to work on the digital fashion team. And that was just another amazing experience. So at InStyle.com, I got to write market stories. I got to interview designers and just learn so much about how the digital side of the magazine world works. So at that time, I learned about SEO, how to write a digital article, how to top edit, how to write an eye-catching headline. And also while working at InStyle, this was like when Instagram was first starting to take off. So no one was running the InStyle Instagram, which is crazy to think about. So during my very first fashion week working there, they had me run the InStyle Instagram. I didn't have creative freedom, but essentially during Fashion Week, all the editors at all times of the day were texting me photos that they were taking at the different runway shows and then texting me like captions they thought, and I was posting them in live time on the InStyle Instagram account. It's crazy to think back that like there weren't dedicated people and teams running these accounts at the time. So I really was just like dove in and got to start learning about like all the different digital aspects of InStyle as a magazine. So now working at InStyle, I wanted to talk about the birth of making it in Manhattan and how that all came about. So I was working at InStyle. I had recently left Teen Vogue. I was learning so much. I was doing so much. I was interviewing people like Betsy Johnson and just having these amazing experiences. And I essentially just didn't want to forget all the amazing things that I was learning. So I just started writing them down, kind of more so like a journal for myself. And I just started writing down experiences I had and things that I was doing. But essentially, as I was writing them as well, I was realizing that all of them had little lessons. So like, how to break into the industry, how to land an internship, how to network, everything had a little lesson. So after I'd written what I'll call like 3 chapters, I didn't know if they were chapters, they felt like chapters to me. I let one of my friends look it over and she was like, wait, this is so great. You need to keep working on this. Like maybe this could become a book. And I was like, wow, I never thought that I could write a book, but how cool would that be? When I was first starting out, as I've mentioned, I knew absolutely no one. So imagine if I could help other people who felt the same way. Like they knew no one, like they had no connections and they wanted to break into the industry, but just had absolutely no idea where to start. So I was like, it would be really cool if this could be real and if I could write a book to help people. So then my next thought was, okay, well, how do you write a book? Like, how does something become a book? So I had this one girl that I knew from high school who worked at a publishing house, but she worked at the publishing house in the audio department. So it was a completely different department. But I was like, I should still reach out to her and ask her for coffee because she might be able to just like give me some advice. So we went out for lunch actually, and we like had a really fun lunch and caught up. And I essentially was like, I just want to pick your brain. Like, I don't know how to write a book. Where do you even start? And she was like, the starting point is to just get a literary agent. And so similar to like an influencer agent, if you're listening to this and you like understand how like having an influencer agent or a manager works, they pitch you out for jobs and projects. So a literary agent does the same, but they're pitching your book out to publishing houses because publishing houses, funny enough, don't accept any unsolicited submissions. Like, they do not accept submissions just like from me as a person. Like, if I just emailed someone at HarperCollins and was like, hey, I wrote this book, they'd be like, do you have a literary agent? Like, your literary agent has to send it over, which I don't fully understand, but like, that's the way it works, is they do not accept submissions just like from people. Maybe because then like they'd be getting literally millions and millions of emails and submissions. So maybe that's why. So I understand where you guys are coming from. But so anyway, she said I needed to find a literary agent. So I was like, how do I find a literary agent? My trusty best friend, Google, that I always used when starting out in the beginning of my career, I went to Google and I just started Googling like literary agents, how to find a literary agent, literary agents, you know, in New York, whatever. I was just Googling literary agents. And I ended up finding this website that I'll call it a database, and it had a list and list and list of just like literary agents and their emails. And I don't know what I stumbled across, but like I called it the pot of gold, and I just started emailing these people. Like, I just started going down the list and being like, sending everyone. I had like a short little write-up of like who I am, that I worked at InStyle. I was, you know, a digital fashion writer, and I had this idea for this book about how to break into the industry. And then I attached the first 3 chapters to the email so that they could see it. So again, back to my applying for internship days, I emailed and emailed and emailed so many people. Finally, the person who ended up becoming my literary agent, she answered me and wrote me back and was like, this sounds like a great idea. Like, let's work on it together. Because I obviously only had 3 chapters at the time. So she really became my guide to like finishing the book, fleshing it out, how to write a book, this, that, and the other. Like, became kind of, you know, my mentor in terms of like figuring out how to develop a book. And then she, during the time, also suggested I start my website, making it in Manhattan, so that I could start writing articles about career advice and interviewing people. So the book idea technically came before the website or the blog, because a lot of people have interviewed me and been like, oh, Caroline Vazzana's blog was adapted into a book, but it's actually the opposite. The book idea came first, and then I started the website kind of as a means to start sharing career advice and building a community around that. And then the book was already in the works, and then we pitched it out to publishing houses, and she pitched it out, and then eventually I ended up getting a book deal. So now at this time, though, I was still at InStyle the whole time. So when was I writing this book? I was writing it on my morning commute every single morning on the Notes app on my iPhone. That's when I was writing it. I was writing it on the weekends. Like, every weekend I would wake up at like 8 a.m. and act like it was like a work day. And I'd go downstairs and like write and for hours and just like act as if I had to like work all day, and I would write the book. You know, I also want to point out I was like young. I was in my mid-20s, like 24, 25. And, you know, at that time I did give up on things. Like, there was a lot of brunches with friends when everyone was like going out and going to boozy brunches. That was like very big back then in 2015 or 2016. And I'd be like, no, I have to stay home and write my book. And I'm not saying I never did anything fun, but I definitely gave up things. Like, I missed out on things because I had this dream, and I had in my heart, like, I felt like I was supposed to be doing this, and I really don't have any regrets at the end of the day. But I think it's just important to call out, like, do something today that your future self will thank you for kind of vibe, because that's like one of my biggest quotes that I hold on to is like, did 30-year-old Caroline now know that what 25-year-old Caroline was doing was going to like ultimately like set me up for my whole career? No, I had absolutely no idea. But like giving up those Saturdays brunches or giving up those like crazy nights out or things like that to work, to write the book, and to just like have this crazy dream that people were like, oh, she's writing a book. Like, that'll never happen. Like, to give up things for the dream, like, obviously balance is so important. And as I've gotten older now, like, I definitely make time for friends and I definitely go out and I definitely have fun. But I think there are formative years where, like, saying no to certain things and focusing on your goals is so important, because you never know what groundwork you set for yourself in your mid to early 20s could lead to down the road. Like, really, really, like, I had no idea that what I was doing then was going to ultimately be the whole trajectory for my entire career in like the next 10 years of my life. So I was still at InStyle, and at the time as well, I'm writing my book, I'm working on the website. I started kind of building my social media presence. So this is kind of when my daily outfit pictures essentially kind of started, not what we know them as now, but every day on my lunch break, I would grab a coworker at InStyle and I'd be like, could you take a quick outfit picture of me outside? And they would always, like, these people would be like, why? And now they're probably like, oh my gosh, that girl like was crazy, but she was onto something. But every single day I'd be like, to a different person, because I felt bad bothering the same person every day. And then I'd also be like, do you want some photos? They'd be like, no. And now, like, you know, outfit photos and photos have become like everything. But I was like, could you just take a quick outfit photo? And they were just quick. Like, honestly, like, looking back, I laugh at the photos. They were so cute. And I was like so innocent. But the hashtag I would use was hashtag what I wore to work today, because I was going to work every day. So I essentially was creating like a series or something for people to like look forward to or expect. Like, I was ultimately building a personal brand without really thinking about it. So hashtag what I wore to work today was the original outfit photo for Caroline, and essentially became my brand. And that's when I started playing with my style and wearing fun different things to work and playing with my glasses and things like that, to kind of, you know, share my day-to-day, share my style, and share who I was on social media. Because I was writing these articles about career advice, but then sharing who I was behind the career advice and behind the articles and behind the book. Like, who is this girl? What does she look like? What does she wear? What does she do? So now, leaving InStyle and the beginning of Vazzana, my alter ego, my Hannah Montana. So when I left InStyle, what did I do? For the first couple of months, I was still freelance writing. I was styling. I was literally doing odd jobs, copywriting, anything I could to make money and to continue getting my name out there. I also made it a point, because I had still had tons of connections from having worked in the editorial world. So I reached out to every and any connection that I had, and I asked them if I could take them to coffee. So networking and coffee dates were like the most important things when I first went out on my own and started building my own brand, because I essentially had to take this time to re-educate every single person I knew and be like, hey, I'm no longer there. I'm now working for myself. If you have any jobs that we could work on together, like, let me know. If there's any way we could collaborate, let me know. So about, I would say, like a couple of months into it, I landed like my very first small influencer collab, which was like a takeover on a brand's account during Fashion Week. But then it was probably like 6 months or so into it was my first really big influencer job that I landed. And it was actually a digital commercial for Wendy's, the food company, which sounds so funny and so random. But they wanted a commercial, a digital commercial essentially, of like a fashion girl going about a day in her life and then stopping to get a Wendy's salad like for lunch. And then it was like the expectation versus reality of like working in fashion being glamorous, then not glamorous, but then everything lined up when you like ate the Wendy's salad, and like expectation meets reality kind of vibe, if that makes sense. The video is actually on my YouTube, so if you scroll all the way down to like one of my first YouTube videos, you can see it because I uploaded it and it's so cute and I love to watch it back. So after I landed that job, things just started kind of taking off because I posted a ton about it. And I feel like once one brand takes a chance on you and you do a good job and you prove yourself, more things start coming in and more projects start happening. And also something I wanted to call out on that first Wendy's job is just like be nice to absolutely everyone, because that was my first really big job with like hair and makeup on a set. We shot 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and it was a really late day, but at the end of the day, I remember I went around to absolutely everyone, even the assistants, and I thanked every single person for like being there and for their time and things like that. And I can remember like even the assistants being like so like shocked in a good way, even though I was like nice the whole day, obviously, but like sometimes people just don't go around and say thank you, like super simple little things. So just be nice to everyone. You never know who your next boss is going to be, where your next project is going to come from. So being nice to everyone just really goes a very, very long way in this industry. So then after I left InStyle as well, then my book came out in 2018, which is crazy. We had an amazing and really fun launch party at the Seville in New York City, and I wore this red dress that had a train that was from Reem Acra, and it was amazing, and matching red Manolos, and that was just like a really big and it's exciting moment, because all these years, you know, I was writing this book. I was telling people I was writing this book before I even had a book deal, and I was doing all of this, and I felt like a lot of people didn't believe that it was actually going to happen, and sometimes I didn't even believe it was going to happen. You know, I really believe in the power of manifesting and in following your gut and in listening to your intuition in a sense, because I used to walk around the streets of New York City and in my head just repeat over and over again, I'm going to get a book deal. I'm going to get a book deal. I'm going to get a book deal. And that actually is what manifesting is. It's like repeating things over and over again to yourself and essentially telling yourself they're going to happen, but then also putting in the work towards these goals and believing with all your being and all your might that no matter what, these things have to happen. And so I essentially kind of manifested a book deal, but we can talk more about that another time. So now to kind of like wrap up everything, what do I do today? So now on my social media at Vazzana, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Pinterest, I have my website, I have my book. I work with a ton of different brands on different campaigns and collabs, offering my sense of style, offering my voice, helping to market different products and launches and things like that. Social media is essentially the new age marketing. So instead of a brand investing ad dollars into a magazine, they'll invest it into content creators and into social media and things like that. That's the very quick of what I do. And also now I of course have an amazing podcast that you guys can listen to and learn from, and I can connect with you guys here and kind of share my story more with you all. So that was a very, very quick wrap up of what I do. But I feel like I spoke a lot leading up and setting the story, setting the stage of how I got here. So to just give you kind of like my making it in Manhattan tip, if you want to build your own brand, you have to save up some money before you go out on your own. I feel like we flashed forward and now I'm here, right? I was at InStyle, I was at Teen Vogue. But the reality is, as I said, I didn't get my first partnership right away. So I made it a point when I was at InStyle to save up as much as I could. So I had a little nest egg so that when I did quit my job and those first few couple of months where I was just freelance writing and doing odd jobs and didn't really land my first big influencer job yet, you want to still make sure you have some money to fall back on should things not work out right away, because it doesn't just happen overnight. Things do take time, even though things always look more glamorous and easier on social media. And then for this week's question, how do I break into the fashion industry with no experience or contacts? My biggest advice is to do internships. If my story has taught you anything, it's from interning at Anna Sui to interning at Marie Claire. These were amazing experiences where I met people, I made connections, and I also learned more about myself and about what I ultimately wanted to do in this industry. So interning in college, if you can, is an amazing way to just get your foot in the door and to break into the industry, even if you know absolutely no one. Also, you have to be ready to work really hard and just love it. Like fashion fashion is a 24/7 job. I don't just shut off my phone at 5 o'clock and sign off. It's funny. I talked about how I was working till 9 p.m. at my internship. I feel like I work 24/7 now with my job, but I do love it. So you have to make sure you love it, because if you love what you do, you never really feel like you're working late hours or like you're even working at all if you're passionate and you love what you do. And then my last piece of advice, if you're trying to break into the industry, is use social media. I mean, social media is there. You can post whatever you want and you can build an amazing digital portfolio for yourself. If you want to be a stylist, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an editor, but you have no connections, you're in college like I was in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, use TikTok and use Instagram to build your portfolio, show your styling experience. Ask your friends if you can style them, and then do mini photo shoots. You never know who might see it and what it might lead to. So to wrap it up, thanks so much for tuning in and listening of how I started my career in the fashion industry and life before social media and see Vazzana. Make sure to send me a DM with any questions or comments you might have, and I'll see you guys soon.